What is up, everyone? Alright, today, final book of the Mistborn trilogy. How exciting. Obviously, spoilers for the first two videos, first two books, so I'm going to link the videos in the description for the first book, the spoiler-free, and then the spoiler videos. Yeah, so check those out if you're new to Mistborn and want to learn more. But yeah, the TLDR, definitely read the first two books and the series as a whole, or at least I love it. And yeah, let's get into it. So this will be spoiler-free pre-reading this book. If you like the first two books, I mean, it's more of a good thing, so I think you'd like this book too. It starts off faster paced than the second book did, but it's still a little bit slow here and there. There's a lot of magic system explaining, just kind of fleshing out everything that's gone on with inquisitors and how they're kind of being controlled and the spikes and stuff, just fleshing all that out. Sanderson almost writes in a horror way, the way this is written. I would say that's the biggest difference from the other books. The other books had the ominous feel of ash is falling and there's mist and stuff. But this book, yeah, I mean, it's worse. The mists are actively assaulting / killing people. The ash keeps falling more and more as the book goes on. So it's got the same feel, but then it's got that sort of horror vibe almost on top of it. Of course, at the end of the second book, you had Elend getting Mistborn powers, so they talk about that. The plot twists in this book, though, are better than the second book somehow, and I had huge praise for them in the second book, and it's got less of a slow start overall. There's definitely slow points in this book, but it's definitely faster than the second book, maybe about the same pace as the first book. But the plot twists in this book are better than in the first book, I would say. Or there's certainly more of them, and they're of a high quality in this book. I'm honestly not sure how Sanderson crammed in so many plot twists or crazy things at the end. But yeah, before I get into all the spoilers about the plot, I will say you do follow around Spook a lot more in this book, and I actually do like his story a lot. I like his story in this book probably more than Sazed's, or definitely more than Sazed's, and it was on par with the Elend and Vin stuff that went on. Oh, and I like Tansoon a lot. I like learning about the culture of this crazy species that we didn't know about, and the world, the Inquisitors, the Koloss, all of that gets super well fleshed out. It's almost over-explained or overwritten a little bit here and there, but it's not too overwritten, maybe just a tad for me. Especially because Sazed Monday morning quarterbacks everything after it happens. But I mean, those are very short segments, and they're helpful if you were confused or something. Sazed explicitly hey, this is what happened. But yeah, anyway, let's get into spoilers, because oh my goodness, there are so many things to talk about. I can't even get to all the things, honestly. I don't even know where to start. Oh jeez. Okay, I'll talk about Sazed's story, because this is definitely my biggest con of the book. It might even really be my only con, or at least major issue. I like Sazed way more in the first two books. I'm this is a great side character in the first book, and then in the second book, I'm oh, I like how he's got more pages and stuff. But then this book, he just has the cliche, I lost God, I'm hopeless, whatever. And then it's quest to find God again, or spiritual belief, I guess, because he's not explicitly looking for one God. And yeah, it's a bit cliche, I think. Can I talk about Sazed like Sazed talks? It's a bit cliche of a story, I think. In addition to being cliche, he's way more boring, I think. It wasn't horrible though. Sazed, he was fine. And then at the end, I like him interacting with Tansoon and all the Khandra and kind of just figuring all that out. Let's talk about the spook part. So the spook part was great. I like how he's kind of separated on his own quest. His quest is kind of to spy and spook around, I almost said, and try to like convince like the city to voluntarily give up their supplies. And as like the book goes on, it seems more and more pointless just because like the world is clearly ending, so like why are they trying to get all the supplies? But even though it's like pointless and disconnected, I like didn't think about that during the story because I just liked the story so much. And Sanderson found like little ways to connect stuff in, like sending the rider to talk about any impaling of metal like could affect Vin, and obviously we'll get to that later. So yeah, it's almost like two stories in one, but I just like both of the stories. And it was cool to see, Spook's troubles with like a radical zealot type leader, and then Elend and Vin, you're like, oh, like this guy seems normal, maybe like they can talk him through this and convince him to help them with the end of the world. But then you realize that the ruler of Utro is also like a zealot, fairly crazy religious person who's like letting their religious beliefs affect what they think and like how they see the world. And like it's fine to have religious beliefs, of course, but he's like, yeah, I mean, like there's waist deep ash falling from the sky, and I think the Lord Ruler is gonna save us. And it's just like, ooh, so yeah, they're both like radicals in different ways. Like one is like business as usual, let's throw parties, noble class, ska class. Oh, and then secretly I believe that the Lord Ruler will save us from the end of the world. And then the other one's like totally revolutionary, and it's like, yeah, ska people, and like down with the nobles, and like burn their homes, and you can't do anything that like even involves like noble clothing or noble wine or anything like that. And also I think Kelsier will save us from the end of the world. Total opposite ends of the spectrum as far as decorum, but like the same, not the same beliefs, but like the same level of radicalness of beliefs. Oh, and I like how Spook gets powers and then like denounces the like Inquisitor Spike powers. That was awesome. All right, now we got to talk about Vin and Elend, though, because Vin and the earring and, like, obviously the weird death of her sister. And it's like, that was, like, craziness. I actually didn't foresee her sister's, like, death scene coming into play so much in, like, the realm of what was happening in the story until, like, the middle of the story. Once I figured it out, I was like, oh my gosh, I understand now. And I figured it out before Sanderson explicitly said it. It was like maybe halfway through the book, I forget. And then like whenever she would take the earring out and like the voice would go away, the voice of Ruin or her brother or whatever would go away, I was like, you clever little dangus, Brandon Sanderson. And then, like, it made sense with piercing copper clouds. Like, it all fit together in my head. So I was happy I figured that out. Sanderson just subverted expectations so well. Because in the first book, he's like, Kelsier tells Vin, it's like, hey, you should wear this earring because if it's pushed through your ear, like, no one can affect it or anything when it's in your ear. But then you can take it out and use it as metal if you need it in like a super rare pinch situation. And I'm like, oh, like this is the most obvious telegraphed thing that will ever happen in a book. And then Sanderson eventually like has the earring go through Marsh's like whatever, like face, I think. And it's, he like gives you what you expected, but at that point I'm like, no, that's not what the earring is doing. That's not what the earring was for. Sanderson didn't bring the earring along this whole time just to do that. He brought it along because that's how Ruin gets his voice in Vin's head. And I like knew it. But it was great though, because you know, Sanderson subverting expectations, and you just see the the earring as just nothing the whole time, basically, until you figure it out. Yeah, probably my favorite plot twist in a book that I've figured out before the plot twist is revealed. But Brandon Sanderson definitely, I think, intended for at least some people to figure it out in different parts of the book. Because when I figured it out, I'm like, oh, there's like another part where someone could figure it out, and then there's another part where someone could figure it out. But then, like, when I figured it out, I was like trying to think back, and I'm like, yeah, I could have figured this out, 4 chapters ago, and I probably could have figured it out in like the first half of the book. I don't know. Anyway, I just love it. Definitely my favorite part of like any series ever in terms of like plot twists and subverting expectations and all that. Let me know when you guys figured out, if you remember, that the earring is how Ruin is in Vin's head. For me, it was basically just right before she like uses the earring to puncture it through Marcia's head. It was like, the chapter before that. I liked how Sazed had turned out to be the hero of ages instead of Vin. It made a lot of sense. Vin and Ellen giving their life to save the world, basically. That was awesome. And then, like, the Mist just beating people, but, like, it was, like, for a good cause, kind of. Like, that was a great plot twist. When the Shadow was, like, not saying the Mist were evil, I was like, what? Really? Like, I feel like I probably should have put that together in my head. But that's one of the things I didn't put together. The ATM being with the Kandra, that was, like, a great way to fit everything together at the end. The Kandra being the former Terrace people, Lord Ruler's friends, phenomenal. The Kandra overall, and, like, the second one betraying, like, the first generation, or the second generation betraying the first generation. Like, awesome. Obviously, you kind of see that coming because the second generation are all jerks, which you see right away. Or they're like, they're their own kind of religious zealots. There's a lot of like radical religious zealotry. Most of it, like, obviously doesn't work out, but the Kandras, whatever, I don't know what you want to call it, like suicide pact across their race. That was like one of the situations where it did work out because they would have been mass mind controlled if they hadn't done that. And Ruin overlooking the Kandra for so long was awesome because they weren't like destroyers, and like the Lord Ruler knowing this, cleverly using the Kandra to like hide his ATM. And the ATM mattering is awesome too, because that was like, you forget about the ATM for like the first half of this book, and then you start to realize, oh my gosh, the ATM's going to matter. But yes, overall, totally would recommend this series. It is amazing. This is probably my favorite book of the series, just because of all like the plot twists at the end. I can't even put it into words, even though there are maybe a few things I dislike about this book more than the first book. It's the plot in this book. Everything just comes together like a puzzle. I know I say this about like every Sanderson book, but yeah, everything comes together like a puzzle. The fact that it was an entire series of things coming together rather than just, a book of things coming together, that made it better in my head than even like the last 2 books or Elantris, which I love all of them. But yeah, this is clearly just another 5-star Sanderson book, and I'm obviously going to read more Sanderson books. Maybe I'm going to take a little break. I've got some other stuff. I'm in early days in this book. We will be talking about this book. I'm not too deep into it, but yeah, I'm definitely going to finish the first book anyway. So yeah, that's a sneak peek. And more New York Times vlogs on the way. I don't know how much longer I can read the New York Times opinion section. It is just like making me lose brain cells. But yeah, anyway, I digress. Like, comment, subscribe if you want more fantasy reviews / reading reviews of nonfiction stuff too. And yeah, see ya.